Good afternoon and welcome to the South Orange County Economic Coalition's September virtual general membership meeting. My name is Amanda Walsh and I serve on the board of directors for the South Orange County Economic Coalition and I'm the community relations manager for the University of California at Irvine. This fall, for the first time in more than a year, thousands of students are headed back to the classroom. Our program today is focusing on what this year's back to school looks like in South Orange County. Today, we will be speaking with educational experts in both South Orange County, both at the K-12 level, as well as the colleges and universities in our community. We're going to start off our program this afternoon with a discussion with the administrative leaders of our public and private K-12 schools in South Orange County. We're grateful to have with us today both of our South County Public School District superintendents, Dr. Crystal Turner of the Saddleback Valley Unified School District, as well as Kirsten Vital-Brulte, superintendent of the Capistrano Unified School District. We also wanted to make sure our private schools had a voice in the conversation as well, so we invited Eric Stroop, who is the principal of J. Sierra Catholic High School in San Juan Capistrano. Thank you all for being with us today. Kirsten, let's start with Capistrano Unified School District. You have the largest district in South Orange County with 47,000 students, 4,000 employees, making you the largest employer in South Orange County. Tell me what it is it's like adjusting to a global pandemic and where we are today.
So none of us were prepared as superintendents to lead through a pandemic. I would say that. And I think at the end of the day, overnight we closed, we opened, we were hybrid, we were online. Our teachers had to really get used to doing everything to one-to-one devices with our students to video. It was extraordinary what our teachers learned. At one point, Capistrano was 25% of the entire state of California's in-person enrollment. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary, the work that in collaboration with teachers and parents and our board and our classified staff and administrators did to make all this work. So, it's been a challenge, but at the end of the day, when things started opening up better, it's been extraordinary for our kids to be able to be in person, to be safe, and to be learning together.
Thank you. And Dr. Turner, like Kirsten, you have thousands of students, parents, teachers, and others, many of whom have very passionate viewpoints on everything from masks to vaccines. How have you navigated managing these oftentimes conflicting views?
Well, I think there's a quote that I've recently rediscovered that really has guided us, I think, and it's a quote by Walt Whitman that says, "Be curious, not judgmental." And so I think we try really hard to listen with open ears and open minds and try to really give information that's accurate and factual so that our community really understands, where we have flexibility and where we don't. All of it, of course, focused on how can we have our kids have the best experience in our classrooms as possible, because without that, nothing else matters. So I think just really allowing for opportunities for people to voice their opinions and try to share as much factual information as possible is sort of how we've guided ourselves.
So let's bring in J. Sierra Principal Eric Stroop into the conversation. We've heard from our two public school superintendents. What's happening at J. Sierra Catholic High School? How are you all adjusting to the return of in-person instruction? And what are you seeing at the high school level from your students and parents?
Well, we were very fortunate in the sense that we only really had to close in the spring of 2020. We made a concerted effort at that time that we were going to try to be as open as possible in the 2021 school year, and so we did some things that summer that allowed us to remain pretty much open all of last year. We had a week off, 2 weeks off right after Christmas, when there was an increase in cases where we were virtual, but in large measure we were open all of last year, and we took that upon ourselves as a school that we were going to try to do whatever we can to stay open. Well, we have some resources here that, I know public schools just don't have in terms of space, and that allowed us to spread out our classes and lower class sizes. And until, the restrictions on classroom space, classroom setups weren't eased until this year, I know it was a challenge for a lot of schools to have full-time in-person instruction, but we were able to kind of get around that.
Kirsten, what would you say has been some of the biggest challenges you've faced? And also, has the remote learning revealed any educational tools that might be utilized going forward?
So I think the biggest challenge for all of us, not just for Capo, but for all districts, are the constant changing rules and being able to be nimble through that and take a deep breath and figure out, okay, how do we then implement this new rule. So for example, this year, our teachers and employees will need to either be vaccinated or be tested, and setting up the systems to make sure we're doing that. Our kids are able to modify quarantine, which means they're testing at home and then coming back to school, and able to be in the instructional program. But again, all of the back end of that, there's complexity too. So I think that's been the hardest, and I've really appreciated the grace and flexibility and patience while we figure out systems that we've never had to implement before. I also think what's been good in terms of some of the educational tools is that, we've implemented a new learning management system, Canvas, and I think that has been powerful for our kids and families. There's a dashboard. I'm a parent in the district as well. So you're able to see how your student is doing, and you're able to then have an email exchange tied to those assignments with your teachers, and really see, how your child is doing and how you can continue to partner with the teacher at home. So that's been powerful, and we've been working closely with them to really customize Canvas to the needs of our teachers. And so that's work we're doing this year as we've rolled out one-to-one devices for every student.
So let's go to the first question from the public.
Good afternoon, panelists, and thank you for this discussion. My question is, how are athletics and other extracurricular activities affected by the COVID regulations? Thank you very much for answering my question.
Thanks, Joyce. So Kirsten, let's start with you.
So it's been a challenge, to be very honest, and we have worked really hard, I think, as Orange County superintendents through this pandemic, really to do this work together, to come up with strategies together, and then work with the Orange County Healthcare Agency so that we can push the limits of what's expected. So we've been able to, last year kids missed out on games, they missed out on so many things, but we then really as superintendents worked together to be able to get them back playing outside. That was one of the things that we were able to do together. Now fully playing, though there are some considerable rules with California Department of Public Health. So kids are required to wear masks in some of these sports. We're working hard really now pushing at, how could we open up more sports with the testing without the masks? It's really hard for kids, I think, to compete and practice basketball, volleyball, all these sports with a mask on their faces. But it's been great seeing football games and kids back. It feels very normal, and that's really been amazing this year.
Dr. Turner?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Kirsten says, because we work a lot together with the Orange County superintendents. And so for us, our latest push is to see if we can't get weekly testing in lieu of having our basketball and volleyball players wear masks inside, because as she mentioned, that's absolutely seems very challenging to have any kind of excellence in performance when they have a hard time breathing. So I think as the new rules can continue to come out, our goal is to work together to figure out how we can keep kids safe, but still allow them to be able to excel in their sport.
And Eric, how about over at J. Sarah Catholic High School?
Yeah, the most recent pronouncement regarding the masks of indoor athletics is a real challenge. As someone who played basketball, the idea of wearing a mask for 2 hours running in a gym, that's not very tenable. I think that's, to be honest with you, I think it's asinine that that's a requirement. If they want to push the testing, which is what we did last spring, that seems reasonable. That's certainly what the colleges and pros are doing. I think that's a more reasonable solution to that issue. We also, in the course of our other activities, we've moved dances outside, which students don't always like, but it's something that we've had to do, and it's safer. We had to do cohort training for a lot of athletics last year. So instead of being able to have all 70 football players practicing together at the same time, you did it in small groups, which is also challenging and sometimes leads to safety issues when you don't have kids who have coordinated practices suddenly having to play as a team. So the extracurricular challenges almost mirror the curricular ones in terms of being creative and as Kirsten said, dealing with just regular changing of the rules. That's been a continual challenge for every school in California.
And I just would like to add on, because VAPA is so important, visual and performing arts in our school district, that last year we were able to find ways, working with the healthcare agency, to allow for those students to still participate in their art. And so we had spring plays outside, and we had performances outside, and all of that. We really pushed and worked through with Orange County Healthcare Agency to do that safely, so our art students didn't miss out on their opportunities.
It's another really strong example of Orange County superintendents working together to meet the needs of our kids, even in a pandemic.
So here's another great question from the public. This one is about if there is any additional training for teachers as they work through the transition back to in-person learning this year.
Hi, thanks. I've got a question for you. What additional training have teachers received to deal with the challenges associated with reopening after a year of remote learning?
Thank you, Brian. Kirsten, let's start with you.
So much, and we've really focused on the social emotional well-being, both of the adults in the system and of students. So we've done training on mindfulness, social emotional development. We've done work on behavior supports and PBIS, so many things just to bring people back together and being together and what that looks like and supporting their own social emotional health. In addition to those kinds of mindfulness trainings, we've also done training in Canvas. I want to say we've done over 4,000 hours this summer, along with a couple of days. And then we really are focusing on learning recovery. So work and looking at data and English language arts and in mathematics especially.
And Dr. Turner?
Yeah, what Kirsten said, we've done a lot too. Social emotional is so critical for us this year. In fact, the training that we've done with our teachers around Second Step, PBIS, both things that Kirsten mentioned as well have been critical. One of the things that she didn't mention that we are doing is we're really committed to not taking our teachers out of the classroom this year for training. So all of our training happened in the summer, or we will pair our teachers after school to get the training because we really feel it's so critical for our teachers to be with their kids as much as possible this year to address any possible learning gaps that may have happened last year. So I think we're being really intentional with our PLC work, but also making sure that our teachers have as much time with their students as possible.
And lastly, Eric?
I echo those sentiments. We also had to really teach our teachers how to be effective in using Zoom. There's a lot of nuances to using Zoom, and a lot of it was learning as you go. And kids can be crafty and how they interact on Zoom. So making Zoom work effectively, integrating Zoom with our LMS, because there are going to be times, and this is certainly the case now, where we have kids who are, because of contact tracing, are at home, so they're Zooming in while the class is still being conducted brick and mortar. And so being able to effectively teach in two modalities, most people aren't trained that way. You're trained to teach in one modality. So having teachers be able to effectively teach in two modalities simultaneously is something that is still a work in progress, but we've done a lot of work on over the past 18 months.
Great. Dr. Turner, we've seen both the federal and state commit extra funding for our schools. How is Saddleback Valley Unified allocating that funding?
Yeah, that has been a very positive effect of this time, is this massive amount of one-time money that has allowed us to do things like make sure every child has a device and a hotspot if they need it. We did extended summer school opportunities for grades K through 12 where students could come back and reconnect. We've hired additional counselors. We have lower class sizes. We have after school and at lunch learning hubs for our students at our secondary schools. We've added additional elementary music so our teachers have time to do PLC work during the day. It's been remarkable. And the summer school experience was so important because we're able to have some of our kids who had elected to do full-time distance learning, they were able to come back and reconnect in the summer with the school and their teachers in person. And so we were getting these incredible notes from parents who were saying how nervous their kids were about coming back to school in the fall, and that the summer programs really provided that bridge we were hoping to get them back and feeling comfortable to be in person this year. So I think that has been something that we weren't expecting at the beginning of COVID, is some of this one-time money. And I just think the one challenge we continue to try to educate our community in is it is one-time in nature, so we can't commit it to ongoing costs. So,
Eric, as a private school, of course you wouldn't have access to that government funding, but you have an active board and active parents. What are some of the key factors you discovered to help your students excel in the face of this adversity?
Well, I think what was critical is just regular communication. Staying on top of the guidelines changes, letting the parents know what those guidelines changes were. I can't stress enough the importance of just communicating with our parent base, and that was really, really helpful early on. And sometimes that communication was, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you're going to be the first ones to know when we know. And I think that was, for a lot of parents, a source of solace. So that was critical. And I also think, it's another key factor is getting teachers to buy in, letting them know that, hey, we're all in this together. This is something where it's a good skill lesson for our students to know that sometimes our country has to come together in times of adversity, and your preferences might not be met, but you still work together to a common end. And so that kind of building a sense of unity in your community and having regular communication, we felt was really essential in being able to tackle still an ongoing challenging situation.
Thank you. So lightning round question for all three of you. Eric, you'll go first. COVID has been a unique situation none of us had dealt with in modern times. What do you think the long-term impacts of COVID will be on these students in the future?
I'm concerned, really. We've certainly seen learning loss. Kids coming into JSerra in prior years had done better in terms of English and math. Missing out on the end of 7th or 8th grade and then coming into high school was a challenge. So certainly learning loss. There was an interesting study by the Journal of JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, in November 2020 that looked at how much life loss occurred because of the lack of schooling in the spring of 2020. And the number they gave was over 13.8 million years of life lost from our children. And I have 3 kids myself. And when you think about that, that's a staggering number. And that was only looking at elementary school students from March to June of 2020. So you think about just all of the other learning loss that took place last year when schools weren't in session for large swaths of the year. That's, as a society, something I think we're going to really, really have to contend with long term, and it's not pretty.
Kirsten?
I think for me, I worry about the social emotional well-being of our kids and getting them through this. There's been isolation and depression and fear, right? So how do we keep building their resilience and support and their mindfulness so that they can continue to thrive? So I just want us to be really mindful of that. I think also, because we were so focused on literacy and numeracy, I worry about some of the gaps in science and in social studies. Because the reality, our teachers did an extraordinary job given the circumstances. But I think about that. I think about the long-term effects of making sure that we get every student through the pathway to college or military or community college, whatever it is that their family and they choose, but making sure we can get them back on the path and really focused on that learning recovery, I think is really important.
And how about you, Dr. Turner?
Yeah, I echo what my colleagues have said. Social emotional stress on our students has obviously been difficult. I think our teachers were remarkable with how flexible and strategic they were last year about getting our students everything that they needed. I'm a little worried about the polarization of our community. We have people who really are on both sides of pretty much every issue, and they don't see anywhere in the middle coming together. And I worry what that impact is on our students. There's this great book called Thin Air, and it talks about times of stress and how when people really are embedded in that stress, their brains actually are rewiring. And it may not, and I wonder, and I don't know, if that is potentially what we're looking at here when we have our communities completely divided on some of these hot topic issues. So I worry what our kids are hearing from their families as well. So all of that polarization lands with our staff. And I am so indebted to our staff for their resilience last year. And I'm worried that we hoped coming into this year that would kind of recede and we'd be back to more normal, but it isn't. We're starting into a new chapter, and I just can't say enough about how our staff is responding to these very difficult times. It's incredible.
So final lightning round question for you all. We've talked a lot about COVID-19 and resiliency. So tell me one thing about your district or your school that you're most proud of that is not COVID related. Eric, we'll start with you.
I love that. First of all, I love this question, to not talk about COVID for a while. We launched a virtues education program this year, and it was tied into our accreditation process a couple years ago, but it's really focusing on virtues and having all of our teachers, all of our coaches, all of our counselors pick up a virtue of the week and focus on it. So this week it was justice, and I was able to observe some classes this week where teachers are talking about racial justice, political justice, economic justice. And so the Virtues program is something we're excited about as a school, and it's bearing some fruit already by having kids who are nicer.
Kirsten?
You know, I'm so proud of the people. We have an extraordinary team here, from the leadership of our board of trustees and our teachers and our administrators and classified staff, and the incredible partnership with our bargaining units and the support of our families. The people in this district are extraordinary, and I'm just so proud that we come together every day, dedicated, smart, collaborative, with every innovation you can think of to make something work, especially when it changes or something happens, and just having grace and patience. But it is the people in Capo that makes all the difference in the world.
And last but not least, Dr. Turner.
It's been really exciting because what we're really seeing across the board are students who have a renewed excitement for being at school. So they are attending in record numbers, dances, and girls volleyball. I was at El Toro this morning, and the principal said we had a packed house, not a seat in the gym was available for a girls volleyball game. So we're just seeing a renewed enthusiasm for being at school. Kids are grateful to be there, and frankly, we're really grateful that we're all back at, in a more normal setting this year as well. So I think the excitement of that return has really, we're just seeing it all over. It's pretty exciting. So.
Kirsten, Crystal, and Eric, thank you so much for joining me here today and getting our viewers up to speed on what is going on with K-12 education here in South Orange County. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. When we get back, we'll be joined by Dr. Elliott Stern, president of Saddleback College, Dr. Edward Fiesel, president of Sauk University, and David Soulelis, UCI's director of the COVID-19 response team. So stay with us.
Did you know almost 2 out of 3 American jobs are created by small business? And 9 out of 10 companies have fewer than 20 employees. Our local dry cleaners, hair salons, florists, coffee shops, and restaurants, they need your support now more than ever. As the leading business advocate in the region, the South Orange County Economic Coalition encourages you to shop local to protect our hometown businesses. For our jobs, for our neighbors, for our community. Shop local.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. We heard from our 2 South County Public School superintendents, as well as Eric Stroop, principal at J. Sarah Catholic High School in San Juan Capistrano, about what is being done to ensure the health and safety of our students, their families, and the teachers and faculty as we reopen in-person instruction. Now let's move on to higher education and take a look at our colleges and universities. Joining us now are Dr. Ed Fiesel, president of Sauk University, Dr. Elliott Stern, president of Saddleback College, and David Soulelis, the director of the COVID-19 response team from UC Irvine. David, let's start with you. Since you have the most students, tell me a little bit about the protocols that are in place for UC Irvine and its 37,000 students and 25,000 faculty and staff.
Good. Thank you for having us here today to talk about this. Yes, we've got quite a bit in place, a number of layers of protection really to help keep the campus safer as we return to in-person learning. Probably chief among our layers is our vaccination policy, which requires all students, staff, and faculty to be fully vaccinated or to have an approved exception or deferral from the policy. And I'm pleased to report that over 90% of our students and employees are fully vaccinated. So that's just great news and a good start for us for the beginning of the academic year. We have a testing program in place as well. So asymptomatic testing for anybody that is not fully vaccinated is required. We'll be doing a sampling of testing for those that are fully vaccinated as well. And any of our students, staff, or faculty can drop in at any time for a test. Another big piece of what we do is symptom checking. So we require all of our students and staff and faculty to do a daily symptom check that's reported to the university. And if they have symptoms, they're directed to stay home. And we link them up with our occupational health and student health centers to be evaluated and then tested for COVID. And this is really key, I think, for all of us. Is a real cultural shift, right? Not to come to work when you're sick, not to come to school when you're sick. And so we're really focusing on that message and the importance of the symptom checker. We have a robust contact tracing program on site under a memorandum of understanding with the Orange County Healthcare Agency, with a team of dedicated contact tracers that can do case investigations of all of our cases, follow up with close contacts, and then finally isolation and quarantine support. So we have over 15,000 students living on campus this year. And we want to support them to be able to safely isolate and quarantine should they become positive or a close contact to a case and need to quarantine to help break that chain of infection.
Great, thank you. Jumping over to you, Dr. Fiesel. Soka University is much smaller and offers a more intimate educational setting for your students. What are some of the differences and similarities you have with your COVID protocols?
Yes, great. Great to be with you. Thank you for having us. We're a small residential campus, so all of our students actually live on campus, and so it's a little bit different of a scenario. We have mandated the vaccine as well, and so for all students, staff, and faculty, and our students are currently on campus, and so one of the largest efforts that we made was to be able to bring them, and 50% of our students are from outside of the United States. And that's a very large group that most of them were not vaccinated. So we had to stagger students coming back to campus by whether they were vaccinated or not. Immediately testing them. If there was a positive case, we had to quarantine our students. But I'm happy to report that they're all on campus. And for our first year students, they've already completed a 3.5 week block. And so we've successfully done in-person education for that group, and we're already into our the second week of our semester. We have a committee. Right when the COVID started, we created a back to campus committee where we have professionals and scientists on that committee as well to really help us decide on the policies. And many of the policies are similar to what David just shared. I also hold a weekly president's meeting with our university in-person education committee, and this has representation broadly among the various departments here on campus so that we're all on the same page in terms of what we're doing. We've also instituted an indoor masking policy after the Delta variant, evidence of the Delta variant's higher contagious nature. And so our students have been following that policy, but we also allow for the possibility in classes, if they can physically distance, then the professor can unmask or students can ask questions. But we have small class sizes, so we haven't seen any impediment to our in-person education because of that. Faculty have requested to do outdoor teaching, and so we have a beautiful campus, and so we've set up locations where faculty can do that if they desire, and a lot of our faculty have taken us up on that opportunity. More technically, we went to 100% external air exchange. So there's no recycling of air. We upgraded our air filters to hospital grade MER 15 filters. And so that was kind of on the facility side. And because we're a residential campus, we have one dining hall. And so all of our students eat there. And for the time being, we've asked our staff and faculty to not use the dining hall so that we can control the flow in the dining hall and the space that's used by our students. So those are some of the policies we have that are similar and maybe a little different from UCI.
And finally, we have Dr. Stern, president of our local community college, Saddleback. You're requiring masks for indoor classes, but have an online option as well. And you're even offering on-campus vaccinations, is that correct?
It is. We're an authorized vaccination center, and thank you for having us, Amanda. I want to pick up on a couple of things that have already been said. I think there's a lot of commonality between us because we're all following similar guidelines and we all try to be data informed in our decision making. So I'm not surprised to see that. I think where there's a little bit of variation is we do have a mask mandate for all indoor learning spaces right now and for all employees. we hope to be able to take our foot off the brake a little bit on that when our numbers come down. So we track the county numbers very carefully, and we've set targets for lifting our foot off the brake when our positivity and daily case rate comes down. We've already hit our target for positivity. We think in the next couple of weeks we'll see the case numbers follow. And at that point, we will allow masklessness for some of our employees when they're not in learning spaces, for instance. That would be a nice first step in terms of moving away from being masked all the time. But we believe that vaccination and masks and ventilation, as Dr. Fiesel pointed out, are the three most important things for reducing transmission on our campuses. So that mask mandate is probably going to stay in place in learning spaces for a long time for us. We do not have a vaccination mandate right now. A recent survey just in the last couple of weeks suggests that we're at about 75% vaccination for our students. Our district is considering a vaccination mandate that would be effective for January because we think we can get that up a little bit on our own. And being an authorized vaccination center means we can very conveniently, every time we have an event on campus, tell students, hey, the Student Health and Wellness Center is open and they're vaccinating right now. So it's important to try to offer incentives and the opportunity to do things very quickly. I also just want to point out, that ventilation, as Dr. Fiesel pointed out, is terribly important to us. We've done similar upgrades. Increasing that outside air, even though it is terribly energy inefficient to do so, is something that we're all doing right now, I know, because we know that dilutes the viral load in the air, those aerosols we've all read about, and that therefore reduces risk of transmission.
And Dr. Stern, a couple of other things we can look forward to this fall at Saddleback College. Register now, pay later. What's this program about?
So, I'm going to guess that my colleagues in the room have also become more acutely aware of non-academic barriers as a result of the pandemic. We've always tried to pay attention to those things, but particularly in the early days of the pandemic, when we saw a lot of economic downturn in those first few months, we had students without technology, we had students without Wi-Fi, we had drive-throughs to pick up 1,000 laptops, hotspots. Like everyone, we've been, giving out the federal student aid as fast as we can to those in need. And we're also looking at our own payment system and our own, the expenses that we put forward for students and trying to find new ways to try to allay some of those. And a payment plan is just something that we haven't done up until now, but it's something, a learning, if you will, from COVID that we're going to use and carry forward in the future. So addressing, the payment plan is really just a tip of the iceberg for doing a better job of addressing those non-academic barriers as we go forward.
And one more follow-up. You also have your new football stadium opening this fall, right? And you're no longer the Gauchos, you're now the Bobcats?
Yes, we are the Bobcats. It is official. We changed our mascot after 52 years. The first mascot wasn't exactly chosen through an inclusive process, but I'm very proud that the new mascot, the Bobcats, was chosen in such a way. And we will be unveiling our new graphic image, our new logo for the mascot at our opener on October 2nd. So we built the stadium over the course with design and discussion, probably took a decade, but we technically finished completion of the stadium during the pandemic, but we're just able to open our stadium now and have our inaugural football game in it on October 2nd, just 2 weeks and a night from now. In addition, as the campus opens up more and more in these phases, for instance, tonight I'm attending the reception for the opening of our gallery, this little thing that we missed that we haven't had in 2 years. So all of these steps are very important pivot points for us in terms of returning to normal, or as I like to say, a new normal, or whatever that post-COVID vision is for us. So we're looking forward to the stadium opening and unveiling the Bobcats. And if people would like to attend, it is free to the public. There's food, there's free swag, and you can look at our website for the RSVP link.
Great. Well, we're definitely looking forward to that. So jumping back to you, Dr. Fiesel, tell me a little bit about SOCA University. You're celebrating your 20th anniversary this year. What is it that makes SOCA such a unique university experience?
Yeah, we're more than anything, the difference between, I think, SOCA and maybe Saddleback and UCI is the size of our student body. Right now, we're at about 480. We'll grow to 600 over the next several years. We're independent four-year liberal arts college. We're ranked 29th in the nation by U.S. News and World Report, 13th in the nation in terms of best value. It's a university that's founded based on Buddhist principles of peace, human rights, and the sanctity of life. Our university founder, Daisaku Ikeda, is an educator, philosopher, international Buddhist leader. And he gave us this wonderful mission to foster a steady stream of global citizens committed to living a contributive life. We're non-sectarian. There's no religious instruction. Majority of our students and faculty are not from the Buddhist tradition. But I think students and faculty do come here because of that mission, that desire or goal to become global citizens. And individuals that really advance their own lives, develop their skills and abilities, but also work for the benefit of others in our local, national, and global communities. So it's really developing this global outlook. Half of our students are international, and so it really creates an international community here on campus that is as much a learning experience as in the classroom. We have an interdisciplinary focus. And we believe a lot of the problems that the world is confronting will require that interdisciplinary effort and not narrow disciplinary effort. Although we see in the case of COVID, that's important as well. We also do education with a comparative approach, really looking internationally, even within a single class. We have 5 broad concentrations. So our major is liberal arts. We have a single major, which is very different from any other place. But we have these broad concentrations of international studies, humanities, social behavioral sciences, environmental studies, and we just introduced life sciences last year. We just opened also our new science building, a 90,000 square foot science building with teaching labs and research spaces for faculty, and our students and faculty work very, very closely there. A couple unique features is we have mandatory study abroad, which is the cost of that is already in the tuition, so students don't have to pay any extra for that. And we also have an academic calendar that allows in January for something we call a learning cluster, which is a research seminar that even in the first year, our students participate in this, where there's 12 students with a faculty member examining some real world issue and proposing solutions to that. And so students are able to do that each year as well. And because there's no class conflict, they can do field research. We've had learning clusters travel all over the world. They can apply for grants that we provide. So those are some of the unique aspects of SOCA.
And you sort of touched on this already, but with fewer than 500 students and more than 200 faculty and staff, I would imagine your students get more individualized attention than most colleges or universities could provide.
Yeah, we have a 7-to-1 student faculty ratio, so that's pretty low. And our average class size is 12. And so, as I like to tell prospective students, you can't fall asleep in class. The faculty will catch you. And, it's really a focus on what we call humanistic education. And the vital part of that is the faculty-student relationship. And so trying to create as many opportunities where faculty and students can work very closely. And so in classes, we try to stress a dialogical approach. And you can imagine after 4 years where you have an education where there's 12 students with a faculty member engaging in dialogue, our students really develop outstanding communication and critical thinking skills that they can take with them, for whatever career they go into. A couple examples are all our students are required to do a capstone in their senior year, their 4th year. And so they work one-on-one with a faculty member on a research project that's equivalent to 3 classes. And so that's an example of that individual attention. On my end, I can give an example. Last year, I just completed my first year as president. And last year, we were, of course, remote, but I met with every student by Zoom. Incoming student. And so that was a way for me to have that individual attention and hear about their stories. And then this year I met with all our students in small groups, our incoming students. And so we try to pay special attention again to how we can create these opportunities for close relationships to develop between staff, faculty, and students.
We've got a great question from the public about what mental health services you provide your students during this difficult time.
Hi, I have a question about students' mental health. Is your school or your district hiring additional resources for these students that are struggling to adjust to all the changes?
Great question, Rita. David, let's start with you.
So here at UCI, we have a robust counseling center with staff of mental health professionals that really work hard to support our student community with all of their mental health needs. This is done really in partnership with our Student Health Center as well, and our student wellness programs to really provide a comprehensive approach to managing health and wellness as students are returning to the campus environment for the first time, many for the first time ever, and our returning students for the first time in 18 months.
And Dr. Stern?
We're seeing greater demand for the whole panoply of psychological services across the board through the pandemic and now as we return to campus. So we have increased those resources, but we're one of the few community colleges that has offered for a long time complete psychological services down to stress reduction classes, as well as one-on-one counseling. We have trained psychologist as well. We even have a psychiatrist for students who are on medications. So we too offer robust services. I referred earlier to some of those learnings from COVID, and one of the learnings we've had is the ability to use telemental health. And that's been a huge plus in terms of helping students gain access to those mental health services. So we now offer those services and all student supports and services on our campus, the 24,000 students, either on ground or through Zoom or other online platforms, including full mental health services. And that's a new thing, and that's going to go forward.
And how about over at Soka University?
Yes, we have, of course, our counseling services on campus that are available to our students for it's many sessions that they would like to meet with our counselors. Similarly, with the COVID situation, we've found out that online resources are actually a great resource for our students. And it was difficult for us, especially because of our international student body. They're all over the world. And so, and another thing we were seeing that students wanting to have counseling based on their individual identity. And so we have contracted with Ayana Therapy, where students can find counselors based on their personal identity and have counseling delivered that way. And then also my student support program provides counseling 24/7 for emergency or ongoing counseling in over 240 countries around the world. And so we contracted with them as well. But now that students are back on campus, we're looking to increase those resources, especially again with this need for students looking for counseling with regard to their personal identity.
Thank you all for sharing. Sounds like there's lots of resources available on many different platforms for your students. So lightning round questions for all three of you. David, we'll start with you. What concerns you the most about the upcoming academic year?
For me, I think two things. One is just the reentry of our students and our staff and faculty after being away for 18 months. I think people are coming back to the institution with varying experiences with COVID-19. Some have lost family members, some have lost friends, loved ones. Others maybe not touched as much, but everybody different than they were 18 months ago, and really trying to make sure our systems are set up to meet our students, staff, and faculty where they are at in terms of their comfort with returning, so that we can get back to really that in-person learning experience that is so important and so critical to all of us. And then I would just say my other sort of parallel concern is, COVID, I don't think is done with us, right? So we have still a large population out there in the United States and here in California that are not yet vaccinated. And with a large unvaccinated population, we run the risk of additional surges in the future and perhaps additional variants emerging as the Delta variant has done on us to create a surge. So, we have seen this happen to us before where things have settled down and then things have flared up again. So I think we're all going to have to stay on our toes as it relates to COVID and really encourage community vaccination. It's not enough for our campuses to be highly vaccinated. Our community needs to be highly vaccinated too.
And Dr. Stern?
I guess that my COVID-related fears are probably the same. I think it's the things that wake each of us up in the middle of the night. Another wave, a fifth wave, a vaccine-resistant variant, and outbreaks on our campus. Those are the things that could put us back in our transition and that we're all a little bit fearful of. I would say more chronically, I am concerned about our ability to continue to support folks in a way that makes them feel welcome and want to get back to campus, but at the same time avoids the tendency to go back to pre-COVID. I think we've learned so much, and our ability at this point, at this inflection point, to create a new vision for what our college is and how we deliver education is greater than it ever has been before. And I would hate to see us lose that to go back to a pre-COVID normal or to stay where we've been during the transition. So encouraging people to be bold and brave and look at a new vision for what our college could be and to move forward with that. That's always the fear, that people will be afraid to be bold.
And Dr. Feasel.
Yeah, we have similar concerns in terms of the new variants and breakthrough cases. And so I've been stressing, or we've been stressing in our community, the importance of masking and testing and contact tracing to really be able to identify cases and handle it immediately. Also, I would say, with all of our students back on campus, I feel, there's increased anxiety among our students because, for the last year, they've been doing education remotely. There hasn't been much opportunity to socialize. So we're a residential campus, so it's almost like going 0 to 100. Now they're all on campus and they're all living together. And so that creates a lot of anxiety, for our students. And so, but the benefit of a small college like ours is the close relationships with staff and faculty, so we can really help our students, guide them through, and the counseling, and to tell them to find that time for your own space. You don't have to socialize 24/7. And so, but the mental health and well-being of our students is definitely a concern, and we need to pay close attention to this.
So one more lightning round question. How are each of your institutions preparing the workforce to ensure we continue to have strong economic growth in the region? David?
That's a great question. So we've been obviously having a lot of time to think about that over the last 18 months as the nature of work has fundamentally changed for all of us. UCI has developed a Future of Work initiative to help support our faculty and staff and our leaders in thinking about what the workplace of the 21st century looks like after our experiences with COVID. We know that we have to continue to be competitive and offer opportunities for our future of work to really align with our missions around academics and healthcare, learning, and public service, wherever that work may be able to be done. And so we're really investing in our infrastructure, our technology to be able to support remote work where it is appropriate, and to also stay focused on our in-person learning mission, which requires also an in-person learning presence. So I think we're off to a great start. We've got a whole series of toolkits and materials available to help our leaders think about how their divisions operate in the coming years, and trying to figure out what resources we need to put in place as an institution to really be able to support the best workplace possible that services our mission and meets our employee needs as well.
And Dr. Stern?
Well, we're proud to partner with great organizations like SOSEC to make sure that we stay in touch with our industry partners and are always supporting the economy of our region. It's part of our mission not only to increase the economic opportunities for our students, but of our region as a whole. Our college is a comprehensive community college. We are very proud that the majority of our students seek transfer and are often successful at transferring to great institutions like SOCA and UCI, Princeton, Harvard, Stanford, all over the country. But a lot of our mission is also around those career technical education programs. And those are the ones that most closely align and are informed by industry partners. Each of those programs has an advisory board that consists of industry partners and others that help actually shape our programs, help determine our program learning outcomes, and make sure that we keep fresh and updated. We're also looking at how the nature of work is changing and how job prospects are changing, using data on a monthly and annual basis to make sure that we're staying fresh with the programs we have, but also developing new programs. So, for example, we know from the pandemic that one of the areas where we still can't keep up with the demand is in healthcare. So in addition to nursing and other healthcare programs that we offer, we're looking at a couple of new healthcare programs to roll out in the next couple of years. Some of you may know we're also building a satellite facility out in Tustin at our ATEP campus, and that will feature autonomous vehicle support, alternative fuel technology support, as well as culinary, hospitality, and supply chain management. So we're trying to always keep an eye on the future and make sure that we have programs that are ready to support that workforce so that Orange County remains an attractive place for employers to locate, but also make sure that our students have the greatest financial opportunities to transform their lives.
And Dr. Fiesel.
Yeah, as I mentioned, half of our students are from outside of the United States. So, but among the domestic students, about half of those students are from Southern California. And most of them do end up, living and working in the region. So we're certainly educating our students to be leaders in industry and in society in our local region. But among those international and out-of-state students, many of them also end up deciding to stay here because they love Orange County so much. So we're also bringing in those individuals into the region who otherwise might not be here. And although maybe relative to Saddleback and UCI, the numbers we're sending out each year are much smaller, in talking with students, I see that they quickly end up moving into more supervisory leadership roles. And I really do believe it's because of the type of education they receive here at SoCA, where they develop these leadership skills, these strong communication and critical thinking skills, which are essential in any career you go into, and also the ability to work collaboratively and to have this global outlook, which I think is going to become increasingly important in the future as well.
Dr. Stern, Dr. Fiesel, and David Soulelis, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us for our September membership meeting, Back to School in South Orange County. If you'd like to learn more about the South Orange County Economic Coalition, go to our website at economiccoalition.com, or you can find us on Facebook and YouTube. Next month, we'll shift into the fast lane as we go on the move in South Orange County and discuss transportation and the benefits traffic relief have on the businesses in South Orange County. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Amanda Walsh, and we'll see you again soon.